this session, morning session for the commission. And with this started, there's a thing we'd like to do. Scott has a presentation he'd like to make.
You want to do cell phones and that type of stuff? Or do what? You want to tell people about cell phones and that type of stuff?
Okay. Yep. I have to be reminded. There. Two things. A little bit of housekeeping. One is your cell phones, and I better check mine. Make sure your cell phones are off, if you would, please. Other noise makers or something that you might have, please shut them down. One of the things that we need to take is if you have an interest to speak to any item, and this is any item as we listed, there's a blue sheet that you need to fill out there at the back, and then if you fill it out there, it will be brought up to the front, and at the time of the item is brought up and discussed, we'll have that. Tobe, I believe I have a blue sheet for you already. So, with that, at the end of the session, we'll have a general call to the public, which anybody in the public that lasts for the whole session can come up and address the commission at that time. Depending on the number of people that wish to speak, and we may have to limit time. I don't think it looks like today we're going to have a problem with that. Okay, with that in mind, Scott, we'll turn time over to you.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, good morning. Good morning to our guests. We would like to take just a moment for an item that is not on the agenda to start off this morning. And it's old news, but the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission was recognized as the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agency Commission of the Year this year. WAFWA, as it's commonly known, provided a small plaque to the agency on behalf of the commission, but we thought it would be nice to present each one of the commissioners a plaque that they could hang in their office. So we have that. If we could get the commission to come up here, we'll present those plaques and take a picture.
Very nice.
Yeah. I didn't do anything. Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, could we get your end of it? Thank you very much.
If anybody wants packing material for the drive home, let me know.
So, is Kerry going to give a report on that meeting? Is that on this?
Yeah, at the very end.
Put it right now.
Yeah, it should.
I'm gonna put it. I like this.
Okay, the first scheduled item on the agenda is item 13. Butch Parks is the presenter this time. Butch, go ahead.
Good morning, President Price, Commissioners, Director Talbot. This morning, our first agenda item for property rights is the authorization to proceed with negotiations on 3 projects. Here we go. The first one, item A, is at Whiskey Basin Wildlife Habitat Management Area. The Commission is very familiar with this property. It's located just west of Du Bois. It was acquired in 1954, the first acquisition, and it's for the purpose of acquisition is for the management and conservation of bighorn sheep. The Nature Conservancy holds a state grazing lease on a parcel of land located right there on the very eastern boundary of the lower section of the unit. That property consists of 428 acres, and the Nature Conservancy has used their grazing lease basically to conserve the bighorn sheep habitat. The Nature Conservancy contacted the region and said that they no longer wished to hold that easement, and they were going to relinquish it, or they would be interested in transferring the easement to Game and Fish. The region evaluated the importance of that grazing lease, and the region recommended that we move forward with the transfer. The grazing lease, it contains 42 AUMs. The rental for this year was actually $232. I've estimated that the cost to Game and Fish in the event that the State Land Board were to change it from a grazing lease to a special use lease, which they may require that, could be around $600. I know next year the grazing lease fees will be going up from $5 and something to a little over $7 on state land. And what they do is they use that figure in conjunction with some Department of Agricultural statistics as to what AUMs are worth, and I anticipate if we have to change this to a special use lease, it would be about $600 per year. So with that, the department would recommend the commission vote to authorize the department to proceed with negotiations for the transfer of state grazing lease 3-7708.
Discussion?
So I have a quick question. President Price, Butch. So did we ever get straightened out? I mean, like, are there, when the Nature Conservancy set this up, were there some federal dollars involved in there, and did we ever get it straightened out? You know how we used to be, or we are, or maybe still are, considered a entity that can manage, you know, that can, yeah, that can hold those. Remember that there became a question to that? I mean, eventually, and we even asked about being, you know, well, can the ones that we're already holding be grandfathered and those kind of things? Did we ever get that straightened out?
That's actually a little bit different topic than this, but we have not pursued any further NRCS conservation easements, NRCS funded conservation easements.
So this doesn't have any of those dollars involved?
No, it does not.
Okay.
Okay. With that said, Butch,
Mr. President,
I
I
would-
move that we ask the department to proceed with negotiations.
Second.
and move.
To
Are we gonna proceed or acquire it?
acquire.
Well, we would, we're asking to proceed. We could get approval to acquire. To proceed means we will fill out the transfer application and come back in November for approval of the lease.
$600 a year. That's legislative. Would you change your motion to?
Yes. To proceed and acquire would be what the motion.
Okay, the motion is to proceed and acquire. Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Anselmi seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? No nays. Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
The next item on the next line item is line item B, which is the Mule Creek Ranch. It's also known as the Keesaw Ranch. Keesaw stands for Ken and Sam. That's the owners. So Keesaw Ranch is also the same. This ranch consists of about 10,000 acres. Most of the land there is deeded acres. I believe there's about 6,500 deeded acres. And Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation had been working with the owners to try to conserve this property in one way or the other. And they found the best opportunity was to do an exchange with the BLM. It's kind of like a three-way exchange. The BLM owns quite a bit of land within the Laramie Valley that they wish to dispose of. And these are a bunch of isolated parcels. And those owners in Laramie Valley would actually acquire a portion of the Keesaw Ranch equal to the value of their BLM lands. And then on the day of closing, all of the exchanges would occur so that the BLM ended up owning the Keesaw Ranch. Part of the Keesaw Ranch includes some state land, so obviously they wouldn't own state lands. You can see the state lands here in blue. There's several parcels.
Yeah, it is.
In order to facilitate this exchange, because these exchanges take a long time, like 10 years or more, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has proposed a 15-year lease to the owners, and they're agreeable to it. The lease cost is $150,000, and Game and Fish would actually hold the lease and administer public access for hunting on the Keesaw Ranch. Funding for that $150,000 comes from 3 different sources. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation would pay $25,000. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation would apply for a $50,000 grant from the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust. If that grant did not come through, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation would pay that other $50,000. And then the remaining $75,000 would come from a voluntary public access grant, which has already been approved by the NRCS. And this is different from a conservation easement grant. It's a Department of Ag program that they simply are having NRCS administer. That's already been approved. So there would be no commission dollars in this project. The lease would allow for hunting for the months of November, December, and January. And during that time, it's anticipated that there should be a harvest up to about 20 cow elk, maybe a few bulls. And the region feels that this lease and this public access would allow for better management of the elk herd. So, any questions?
What do you, so they're going to lease this 10,000 acres?
That they're going to lease it for a 15-year term. During that term, that BLM exchange process will take place.
So eventually, if this thing goes through, this is going to be BLM. Is
That is correct. So it will end up being public land.
And where is this? Like, it's just.
So the location of this, if you look at the location map, right here is Laramie, and it sits north of Laramie by about 40 miles. Laramie Peak sits right in here. It's actually 13 miles to the west of Laramie Peak. So
What's going to happen here then, except for the state lands, the BLM will be consolidating their holdings on this.
exactly. So they will be blocking up their land into one large piece instead of a number of isolated parcels within the Laramie Valley.
On that.
So if this went through, is it good for this hunting season, this November, January, February? Or?
We plan to come back to the commission in November for final approval, and we just will miss the first part of the month of November if we get final approval. The money is in place right now. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, they'll cut the first check. It may take some time to get the other checks, but the landowner is agreeable to take that first payment and allow us to hunt this season.
We don't have any money in this, and what's our?
We're going to hold the easement, and we're going to develop the easement and maintain the easement. So development of the easement is going to include, there's going to be a parking area located, so here, as you come in here, there's going to be a parking area right about here, and we'll have to develop a parking area. And there may be another parking area up here on the BLM on the northeast corner, which would allow parking on both ends. The access will, so in other words, you're not going to have vehicles driving all over the property. It's basically going to be hunted on foot or horseback.
No ATVs?
ATVs for retrieval. And I believe they can probably hunt on ATVs. We haven't completely negotiated the final agreement yet.
And so what do we have in manpower? We're going to have to police this thing for 3 months too? Have people out there for the 3 months? Or?
So this will be operated, it's not going to be an HMA. It's different from an HMA like our PLPW program in that it's a long-term easement. And also the idea of this lease, it's more than just leasing access. It's, in a way, it's kind of like earnest money, like giving them $150,000 to to show Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's interest in making this BLM transfer happen. So it's going to be managed most likely more similar to a WHMA. The cost of developing the parking lots, that VPA grant also pays for that. We actually have, the grant actually allows for up to $10,000 a year for the development cost.
You've mentioned twice lease and easement. As I understand it, the first 15 years are going to be a lease.
Correct, and if I said easement, I was incorrect.
Okay, and then after that, it's simply BLM administered lands.
Sometime during that time period, that transfer would hopefully take place. We've talked to the BLM about if we've got a lease in place. They said that they would honor our management of the property as, per the lease.
Okay, so I guess so it is a lease. Then after that, it becomes simply BLM lands. We will have, as a commission and the department, an investment in 2 points on that place, up in the kind of upper right-hand corner and down in the lower left-hand corner. We will be expected to maintain those on that. In the developing of those, now you mentioned how much it would be, but you said something about it being in the lease. Will we have to develop those?
So the lease would allow for us to develop one parking area on this property.
Mm-hmm.
The other parking area we're talking about doing up on BLM land. In addition, there's some corrals where this lower parking area will be here. There's a set of corrals, and the lease would allow the use of those corrals by the hunters, and we would be responsible to repair any damage to those corrals done by the hunters. So and the other expenditure that we would have would be our signage. So we'd have some signage at both parking areas, like we typically do, that show the different restrictions for the sportsmen to utilize the area.
Okay. We'll be taking and after the lease expires or is fulfilled, whichever way you want to look at it, then we will have responsibility for those, I guess, in perpetuity type thing.
After the lease expires, I would think that there will be potential for the BLM and the commission to enter into some sort of a memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement as to our administration or management, if any, of these lands once they become BLM lands.
Are there grazing permits that will be allowed on this? Do you know?
There's currently grazing permits on here. The current livestock grazing runs through the middle of October. And I would assume that those grazing permits may remain in place, and I'm not sure how the BLM administers those permits, but I would assume after they own the entire property that it would still be available for grazing.
I would hope so, but if they own the entire property, then it becomes potential to expand those grazing permits.
Yes.
On that, but that's,
yes,
I guess, in the future.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of clarify those points. Commissioners, do we have any other questions?
Mr. President, I'll move that we authorize the department to proceed with this lease.
It's been moved and seconded by Richard. Excuse me. Okay, can we discuss it in our discussion? Okay, let's put this on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. So discussion by commissioners. Commissioner Anselmi.
What if we do like we did the last one, just authorize it and tell them to keep going so it doesn't have to come back in November, so this thing will be ready for hunting season?
Butch?
Well, if we and we could do that, but if the commission wanted to review the actual lease agreement, that wouldn't be available at this time. So if you want to review the lease agreement before you approve it, we would have to come back in November.
President Price? Well, personally, I'd like to review the lease agreement, and in addition to that, if you and I know it would be an estimate, but if you would have an estimate of the potential cost of the two parking areas. You mentioned that there might be $10,000 grant opportunities, but I'd like to know if it's going to cost $20,000 a piece for the parking, those kind of things. Also, the present condition of the corrals, if they're usable, and if that would incur some upfront costs, not just future maintenance, but upfront costs to get those in a usable condition, so that we would have all of that information in November. I'd like to wait on any final decision then, but I would certainly support moving forward.
Okay, we're going to keep the leash on you, it looks like.
Commissioner Little, I can actually answer some of that for you.
Great.
Where the corrals are currently, they use them for shipping. The leasee does, so they're in usable shape. So there won't be much there, just keeping them up. The leasee will repair them after they ship, and then we get to use them. And there's actually a really good road into the corrals because they ship out of there. So there won't be a lot associated with that. The $10,000 we can get from this VPA grant will more than cover our initial development of everything. So.
For both parking lots?
Correct. That upper parking lot up in the north east corner, that's really only accessible currently by four-wheelers. So we'll probably develop this lower one first and then possibly move forward with that one if we need to.
Because moving forward with the other one would require road development as well, access development.
Yeah, we'd probably keep it as primitive as possible because there are surrounding hunter management areas around this too. So.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ray.
Okay. Discussion. I'd like to reiterate what the motion is to authorize Butch to proceed with this. It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay. Motion passes.
Line item C on the authorization to proceed agenda is the National Bighorn Sheep Interpretive Center located in Du Bois. So when you drive to Du Bois, most of you have probably seen this sculpture as well as the building behind it. The National Bighorn Sheep Interpretive Center, it plays an important role and supportive role for the department by providing information and education of the biology and habitat needs of the Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, and it encourages the active stewardship of wildlife and lands. So the Sheep Center, it was created in the early 1990s. The building was actually built in 1992, and it was created through a cooperative agreement between the BLM, the Forest Service, the town of Du Bois, the commission, and what they call the association, which is what I'm calling here the Bighorn Sheep Center, the people who administer the facility. The part of the cooperative agreement that involved the commission was the construction and ownership of the building. So the commission owns this building. The building, at the time it was constructed, it cost just under $200,000. And since that time, the commission has been responsible for major repairs to the building, which there have been none because it's a relatively new building, and the property taxes. The property taxes were a little over $3,300 last year. So as the building is aging, it's obvious that it's going to require some maintenance, possibly at some point in time in the future, maybe even a remodel. And the fact that there's split ownership between this property, it doesn't really allow for protection of an investment. And so we've had discussion last year with the commission when we renewed the lease from the town on the land, and we renewed it for just 1 year in order for the department to explore and make a recommendation to the commission as to whether or not we should acquire the land under the building. We had talked to both the Sheep Center and to the town. Neither of them would like to own the building at this time. And so the department has drafted a transfer agreement for the land to be transferred to the commission. And that transfer agreement would be a recorded document along with a deed whenever we closed. And the transfer agreement allows for the owner, for them to grant us ownership to the land, provided that the Bighorn Sheep Center is allowed a 10-year renewable lease. And after 10 years, we could come back and reevaluate building condition, needs for expense, all of that. During that 10-year time period, there would be an opportunity for the Sheep Center, if they wanted to acquire the building and the land by agreement of the commission and the town of DuBois. So they have basically call it a first right of refusal or an option to purchase if they were able to come up with funds to do that, or if they even wanted to do that. If the Sheep Center in the transfer agreement, if the Sheep Center should fail for whatever reason, then the Game and Fish Department would be able to use the building for department purposes, or would be able to sell the building. And before they sold the building, they would have to give the first opportunity to the town of DuBois to buy the building. And if they didn't want to buy the building, then we could sell the building and the land, and the price received would be prorated between the commission and the town based on the value of the land and the value of the improvements at the time of sale. So that's pretty complex, I guess, but are there any questions?
Mr. President, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. So who owns the building now?
The commission owns the building, and the town of DuBois owns the land under the building.
Yeah. We haven't had to put any money in it yet. The term is yet.
We have not. Last week we were in DuBois. I did just walk around the building. I'm not a general contractor or anything, so I can't completely attest for condition, but it appears to be in very good condition. The first thing I'm thinking might be required would be the roof at Cedar Shakes. The south side of the roof, you see a little bit of curl on the Cedar Shakes, but I think overall they're probably in good condition to go for another 10 or more years.
So how's excuse me, Mr. President, what sheep outfits in this? There's a couple.
Okay.
North American, or who's, which?
This isn't that. This is really more of a local organization, and they are called the National Bighorn Sheep Association.
It's not one of the national sheep. What's this big sheep outfit?
It's no, it's not.
So we're the only ones with any money.
So we would be entering into, basically, we would be bringing in November 3 different agreements. One of the agreements would be a lease agreement with the Bighorn Sheep Center, which would spell out the terms and conditions, which basically are that they would be responsible for utilities, minor maintenance, and ensuring their contents, that sort of thing. And our responsibility in the lease agreement would be to own the building, pay the taxes, and do major maintenance. The other agreement that we would be coming forth would be a cooperative agreement, which will be between BLM, U.S. Forest Service, the town of DuBois, and the commission as to administering this. And the reason the other two agencies are involved is the contents within this building were provided by them. So there's, if you've been in there, there's like, I'm going to call it a panoramic display with mounted sheep and a lot of painting and things like that. And so those are actually owned by the Forest Service and the BLM. And by having this cooperative agreement, it allows the Sheep Center to be able to move forth with other types of grants for doing things within the building, like changing the contents, maybe even remodeling some of the interior, that sort of thing. So that's the purpose of the cooperative agreement. And then the third thing we would be bringing would be what the deed would be for transferring land.
Hey, Butch, you're going to ask for a motion.
So
Summarize this.
Can I ask one question?
Okay. Excuse me.
But as I understand it,
town of DuBois is giving us the land for free.
Yes,
At some stage when we sell it, we might have to give them part of the sale proceeds.
exactly.
But this doesn't change our obligation whatsoever with regard to this building. It just, we end up owning the land and the building as compared to just owning the building presently.
That's correct.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Any more questions and further discussion? Would you summarize then what you want the motion for?
The department recommends the commission vote to authorize the department to proceed with negotiations for the land transfer at the National Bighorn Sheep Center in DuBois, including entering into a land transfer agreement with the town of DuBois.
Mr. President, oh, go ahead, Mr. Commissioner
I
Crank.
would so move.
Okay, it's been
And I would second that.
been moved by Commissioner Crank, seconded by Commissioner Little, that we authorize Butch to proceed. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you. The next memo
I'd like
for
to,
pro-
Butch,
I'm sorry.
I'm going to recuse myself. I believe this is that Summers access, right?
That'll be line item
See,
C on this.
and that's where you're headed.
I'm going to do A and B first,
Oh, okay, go ahead.
and I could do C last if you'd like.
Oh, that's fine.
So the next memo is the memo for approval to acquire or dispose fee title or non-fee title property rights, and it has 4 line items. The first line item is the Laramie Peak Wildlife Habitat Management Area Exchange. So at the last commission meeting in July, the commission authorized the department to proceed with negotiations for an exchange with Kennedy Ranch. Kennedy Ranch is the owner of a portion of the land within our WHMA at Laramie Peak. And they've recently, the Kennedy family has recently subdivided the ranch amongst family members. And one of the family members formed what is being called the Kennedy Ranch. He wishes to be able to build a house on property that the commission holds a access easement on. And he has offered to grant an access easement on 40 acres located right here, which is within the center of the unit, in exchange for the relinquishment, and that's 40 acres there for exchange for relinquishment, and this map is really hard to see. It is right here. These 2 pieces right here, there's 2 20-acre parcels totaling 40 acres, and he would like to be able to build a house and put in a set of improvements for working livestock on those 2 20s. So he's basically exchanging 40 acres that you hold an easement on, relinquishing that, and receiving 40 acres of public access. And the 40 acres of public access that would be received is better access and has better habitat values than what is being relinquished. In addition, he needs an administrative access on a little piece of commission-owned land right here. It's just a short stretch to be able to get back and forth across his ranch. And so those 2 items he would receive, the administrative access and relinquishment of 40 acres of easement, and he would grant 40 acres of access, of better access. And the Laramie Region and the property rights team both support the exchange. And so the recommendation to the commission is to vote to approve the exchange of commission property rights at the Laramie Peak Wildlife Habitat Management Area with the Kennedy Ranch.
Okay, commissioners, questions? I have a question. This is the property rights, surface property rights. Is there a difference of the underlying value, minerals, gas, stuff like that that might enter into the decision?
No, there's not.
There is not. Okay,
In both cases, the underlying surface is owned by Kennedy.
okay. Seeing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion for Butch to proceed.
I would move that we authorize Butch to proceed with the access exchange.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Oh, Mark and Selmy seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any commission discussion? Okay. Motion passes. Could you hold up for just a minute, Butch? I think we need to recognize Representative Sherry Steinmetz. She came in. Raise your hand, please, so I think the local people know you on that. And then, Anton, I saw you come in. Did they explain to you that if you want to speak, we need to have a blue sheet there? Would you fill out a blue sheet, please? And anybody else that wishes to speak to an item, please fill out one of these blue sheets. And we'll make sure that you come up here to speak. Scott pokes me in the ribs, make sure that I recognize you. Right?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, Butch. I'd like to go ahead there, but if we can get that done. We need to go.
So line item B on the approval to acquire memo is the New Fork River Lander Crossing Public Access Area. So the location of this property is south and a little west of Pinedale. And it's located, there's a cut across road that goes over to Big Piney from Highway 191. That's that cut across road, and right here is where it crosses the New Fork River. And so there's a historical crossing of the trail right here on the river. And this piece of land was acquired by the Historical Society in Pinedale as mitigation for the Gateway West transmission project. So this piece of land has been developed to display the historical values of the property and to give people a look at what the immigrants were seeing when they came through here. They camped here, they fished here on the river, and that sort of thing. The Historical Society has offered to donate a permanent public pedestrian fishing easement to the commission along the river, and this is about a half-a-mile stretch right here that they own. And the easement would include from the middle of the river to the high water mark, and then 50 feet above the high water mark for public fishing. In addition to use of a parking area located here, it's already developed, and pedestrian access from the parking area along the different trails that they've already developed to the river. There is the only obligation that the commission will have for this easement is signage. There will be opportunity if there is need for and funds available to do improvements if improvements are needed and or maintenance. But there is no obligation to do either of those. The only obligation is for signage. I can make the recommendation or address any questions you might have right now.
Commissioners, any questions? Okay, Butch, go ahead with
So
the recommendation for the...
The department recommends the commission vote to approve the New Fork Lander Crossing Public Access Area easement.
So moved.
I
Mark,
second the move.
Commissioner Anselmi moved, second.
I second the move, Mr. President.
Commissioner Rail seconds the motion. Commission discussion? Seeing none? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion passes. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn the chairmanship over to our Vice President, Carrie Little, let her handle this.
So line item C is another public access area within the Pinedale region. It's located on the Green River, and it's located, I'm going to say, maybe 10 to 15 miles south, a little southwest of Pinedale. And along this river, there's the Summers Grindstone Conservation Easement, and the Summers Ranch actually had granted an easement located here, and the easement was granted to the county to develop a boat ramp and provide a launch point or a takeout point, either one for watercraft along the river. It's a highly used access area. And the ranch, the Summers Ranch, has asked the department to, or desires the department to have maintenance responsibility on this area. So in order to do that, since the easement is held by the county and there's other responsibilities within the easement other than just this access area, for example, maintenance of the county road, there's some agreements as to this bridge that's located right here. So in order to accomplish the, or to hold the property right that would allow us to maintain this, we have proposed and drafted a memorandum of understanding with the county, which would allow the department to maintain the boat ramp and parking area. And there's also a fence around it as well. And I don't know if you have any questions. The recommendation the department has would be vote to approve the memorandum of understanding with Sublette County for the Green River Summers public access area.
Commissioners, discussion?
Butch, what kind of construction is this boat ramp? What potential cost might we have in the event of a flood or something?
I'm sure most of you know Ray was the Habitat and Access supervisor at Pinedale before he became the branch chief and moved to Cheyenne. So he's very
Commissioners, so the Summers boat ramp has a permanent boat ramp already. We've had high water years. Actually, a few years ago we had a couple of really high water years, and most of the time it holds up just fine. This year there was a little bit of damage, but it doesn't take much for us to fix it. So there's not a lot of overhead for us to maintain this.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Which way's, I'm sorry, which way's the river going? Up the picture down. I'm trying to get up.
Yeah,
It's going down.
it's going down.
The river's going this way.
It's going down.
So you come, that road there on the, that's where you come in from 191, that road on the left?
Right. So you come off the highway up 191 on the right, and then
When you go
Summers Homestead is those houses right there on the right, and there's a road that takes off to the left. It used to be a county road, which ends right there before the bridge. And the county will maintain the road.
And we don't have anything to do with the bridge.
No.
Further discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Line item one. Line item.
So the final line item on the approval memo is line item D, which is Packers Lake Vehicular Access Memorandum of Understanding with Lyman, Nebraska. So the department had talked to the commission last year regarding a problem that we have as far as having legal access to Packers Lake. Packers Lake is located right on the Nebraska line. You see Packers Lake right here. Packers Lake looks very similar to Springer Reservoir that you looked at yesterday, and has similar opportunities for the public for fishing as well as waterfowl hunting. It's a very popular area for the folks from Torrington for fishing, as well as some of the folks from western Nebraska for fishing. So the problem is we in order to access this, you have to come into Nebraska, come down this county road, and then across a section of private land right here, which there is a road located there. And we had been accessing it that way for years, and it was brought to our attention from a landowner that the road was in poor condition, and they were concerned about liability on the road. They thought they owned the road. And so we did a survey, and we did some property research, and we determined that the road was actually owned by the local school district, and it was administered and maintained by the town of Lyman. Of course, there was no maintenance at that time because there's literally no residences or need for the road except to access some of the agricultural lands as well as to access Packers Lake. So the commission had directed or authorized the department to meet with the town, and also we had discussions with the Nebraska, I'm not sure what they call their wildlife agency, but they're equivalent of our game and fish. And we did meet with them, and they basically directed us to discuss this with the town, which we did. And the town is willing to accept maintenance responsibility of the road, but give us the opportunity also to help with maintenance when we have funds available. And so that's what the memorandum of understanding basically says, and entertain any questions.
Questions, commissioners?
So the
See no-
department would recommend the
Okay.
commission vote to approve the memorandum of understanding with the town of Lyman, Nebraska for a vehicular access into the Packers Lake public access area.
Also move.
I'll second.
Been moved by Commissioner Culver, seconded by Commissioner Rail, I believe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
So the next memo that the department would like to bring to the commission are policy guidelines for the acquisition and disposal of real property rights. So currently the department has Chapter 57 of the rules and regulations of the commission that deal with the acquisition and disposal of real property rights, basically for things like conservation easements, for habitat, and for public access. We also have some policy guidelines that deal with non-fee title acquisitions, and also some policy guidelines that deal with the acquisition of employee housing. So the department has drafted a policy guidelines to replace the Chapter 57 and the policy guidelines for non-fee title acquisitions, and maybe a portion of the housing guideline. And so the draft policy guideline basically gives the department direction as to process and procedure for acquiring and disposing real property rights. This policy guideline actually mirrors or is identical to our current process and to our current rules and our current policy, with a very few number of changes. I'll go over those changes.
Butch,
Yes, sir.
didn't we have an easement in here across up there by Soda Lake?
We have deferred that line item. I'm not sure what's on your notebook, but I believe it shouldn't be on there now, and we've deferred it to the next meeting. We needed further work on that.
You must have done that there, and it appears on our screen.
We didn't realize it had been deferred.
Okay, so that's been deferred.
It has been deferred.
Okay, go ahead then.
Right. Back to the policy guidelines. So there are a few changes to them. One change is in the past, when we do temporary use agreements, and by temporary use agreement, that's basically a short-term agreement, usually for a relatively minor property right. We've acquired those agreements if they were less than 2 years, and now we're changing that to less than 1 year in length. We've acquired those agreements without bringing it to the full commission, but simply going to the commissioner within whose district it was going to occur, notify them, and if they wanted to bring it to the full commission, we have. And so the time period for what was considered temporary use in our Chapter 57 says 2 years. We have a new Chapter 23, which is the management of commission-owned lands. And in that new Chapter 23, we have special use permitting, And the special use permitting requires that we come to the commission for special uses that are more than 1 year. And so we wanted to make the policy consistent with Chapter 23 because a special use permit is generally a temporary permit. And so to do that, we changed the 2-year period to 1-year period. So now if we have a temporary use that's going to exceed a year, we have to bring it to the full commission for approval. So that's one change from 2 to 1. The next change I'd like to discuss is in our existing policy, in our existing rules, there is not a process for the acquisition and disposal of administrative facilities. Although there's not a written policy for those, there is one for housing. And we have been using a process that included the commission in the way that we wrote the policy. So the way the policy now is drafted is that administrative staff, and by administrative staff, that would be the director's office and the chiefs and deputy chiefs of the divisions, they would identify the need to acquire or dispose an administrative facility. And then the commission would be advised of the proposed acquisition during the development of the commission's budget, or could be advised of it during modification of the approved budget. An example of this would be John Kennedy's presentation yesterday on the Laramie Lab. And so these are basically going to be informational presentations that the commission may or may not take action on. So the commission's advised of acquisitions. The commission will also be advised of any proposal to dispose an administrative facility. And less than fee title acquisitions of administrative facilities would not come to the commission. For example, let's say we needed to do a 6-month lease for an office or something like that for administrative purposes. Those type of things would simply receive approval within the department, and it would be approval from the administrative staff. The services division would basically direct the acquisition and disposals. So the services division chief would have all those types of responsibilities. The Attorney General's office would review all the legal documents, and the commission would not be paying more than market value or receive less than market value for fee title disposals. And then the fiscal division would maintain an active inventory of all the administrative facilities that are acquired or rented by the commission, and that's so that they can provide that information to the state's fixed asset system, which ensures insuring the property through the Department of A&I. So that's basically new. This is new, but it's basically the same process that we've been doing as long as I've been with the department. And then there is a third item I'd like to bring to your attention, and that is when we sell fee title property. Before, we could only sell it through a sealed bid process or a public auction. If we failed to be able to sell that way, then we were able to list it with a real estate company. But we basically we made it open to the public. And in the new policy guideline, we've allowed an exception to that. Basically, it reads that equal opportunity shall be given to all prospective buyers without preference, except that, at the Commission's discretion, a direct sale at market value may be utilized where that sale provides either continued department administrative and or public access to all or a substantial part of the subject property, or it will provide for the control, propagation, management, protection, and or regulation of Wyoming wildlife. So as a for example, we've done sales before where we sold the property and we maintained public access. And so to do that, we might have done it to an adjacent landowner, and maybe there were some benefits, like you saw Laramie Peak. I'll give you a really good example of this. So at Laramie Peak, we sold about 5,000 acres of commissioned land, and we retained the public access and we restricted development. And in return, we received 5,000 additional acres of public access. So we kept everything that we wanted out of the property, and we got an additional 5,000 acres of public access. And so in cases like that, we wouldn't make that sale available to everybody. We'd be able to do a direct sale to a single party. But it basically has to benefit wildlife in public access. So those are really the three main changes as to what we're currently doing. Any questions?
Commissioners, any questions?
Well, Mr. President, Butch, I guess I have a little problem with the last part, just because while those negotiations are, I mean, I understand a negotiation where you're working with someone who specifically has offered up something, as you described, where you're gaining another 5,000 acres. I mean, I have a little problem with that not, it sounds like the public wouldn't be aware of those negotiations, that could all happen without public awareness. And I wouldn't like that, because we are, after all, a public.
Yeah, there is a public notice requirement for any exchange or acquisition or disposal. So there will be public notice in a local newspaper and a statewide newspaper for consecutive weeks before we do any type of disposal or acquisition. That's also within the policy.
But it wouldn't come up in front of the commission.
It would come before the commission. And it would come before the commission in two steps, basically similar to what we've done today. The first memo, which was the authorization to proceed with negotiations, and then another time, at least one more time. Sometimes we do several because we need to do updates and modifications to what we're doing, but at least one more time for final approval. And so typically what we would do is we would, before we're getting close to final approval, we'd update the commission and advise the commission that we're planning to do public notice. And so that the commission's aware that the public is going to see in the statewide paper and the local paper what our intentions are.
So what are you, so tell me what step you're gaining and the public is perhaps losing in this sort of deal, or maybe that's not the way you'd like me to put it, but
the public is not, there's no change as far as the public awareness or notification process. All that is still the same as it currently is. The change is the method with which we sell. And before, the way it's currently written, we can pretty much only sell by sealed bid or public auction. And what that does is it might make a property available to anybody, whereas if we sold specific to one party, let's say it's another public agency, we could sell a property to them and maintain the benefits that we already have for public use and for conservation of wildlife. So it would allow that opportunity for us to do a direct sale instead of making it into a bid process, because in a bid process you might have somebody come along that would pay a ridiculous amount of money, maybe outbid the other agency or the other party, and then we would lose all the benefit for which we currently have on that land.
so the change is in regard to any time there is revenue involved, because we are already making exchanges. We're already doing those types of things. We did so today, and doing that. And so what you're trying to gain is if there's revenue to the department.
Well, there could be revenue to the department, but basically, if there's benefit to the public and to wildlife, we wouldn't have to put it out to the world to bid on, either by auction or by sealed bid. We would be able to do a direct sale.
Mr. President, if I might,
No, I'll relinquish it. Thank you.
Commissioner, well, this sounds
Frank?
like almost like a grazing lease preference. If there's public and wildlife benefit, we can choose who we give our real property interest to, rather than having to put it up for open bid where, someone may come and pay us more money, but we don't obtain the additional 5,000 acres of public access as Butch used in his example. So, I mean, basically the change, if I understand it, Butch, is we get to decide who we sell our real property interest to, rather than having to put it up just for a sealed bid or a public auction.
Yeah, so it's an additional tool for us to be able to keep public access or keep wildlife benefit on something we're disposing by being able to select who we sell it to instead of making it up for public bid.
But the commission is still involved and the public is still notified and the public still has input.
Exactly. Everything else remains the same. It's just the method with which we do the sale. So the methods could be sealed bid, public auction, sometimes we go to a realtor, and now, instead of doing those three and making it available to anybody, we could select the person that we would like to buy it because of the benefits of that person buying it. They still have to pay appraised value. So there's no difference in the minimum that we would receive.
Well, I think we still had that option without, I mean, those people, I don't know. I think we still had that option within those other
Well, so
opportunities, and I guess I'm more concerned with, I'm not concerned with the fact that we were limiting anything before, anybody's opportunity before, I guess is what I want to say. I'm more concerned with if this is a fourth option, would we be limiting, if I don't think we limited this fourth option before, but do we have the potential of limiting the other three by adding this? Does that make sense?
a little bit. This is giving us, it appears to me that our existing rules were kind of tailored after state lands rules of acquisition and disposal, and they have to do them only by sealed bid or public auction. So they don't have this opportunity to do a direct sale when it might even benefit them. They still have to make it open to the public, and that's in their Chapter 36 of their rules. And I think that's where our rules started from. We were unable to find anything in statute that says that we can't do a direct sale, and so this gives us, as we mentioned earlier, an extra tool to be able to dispose of something and yet retain certain things that we want.
I appreciate the explanation, and thank you, Commissioner Crank, as well.
President? Commissioner Rail?
Butch, whichever method is chosen is still determined or approved by the commission, is that right? If you come to us and say we want to sell the
Yes.
such and such, and that's still under our discretion, I guess, whether or not we approve that method of sale or not.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think further, if it comes before the commission, then the public has an opportunity to comment on it at that point
Yes.
on that.
As well as during the public notice period.
Doing the other public notice, but they have the final opportunity to comment. Commissioner Crank?
President, I guess this is a question for Butch, and maybe just more of a rant. I'm not a big policy guy. I think Butch's shop does an incredible job of keeping us informed on what they're doing with regard to commission-owned lands and both fee acquisitions and non-fee acquisitions. And we have this process that we just all saw today, that If the department is interested in either a fee acquisition or a non-fee acquisition, they come to us and seek authority to proceed, and then once they negotiate it, they come back to seek authority to acquire. So I'm personally, as a commissioner, really comfortable with how we do things. And so what I understand is happening today, just so the commission, because it's a future agenda item, Mr. Edberg in a minute will stand up and give us a very brief explanation about why we should repeal Title 57 of our rules, which I understand currently are in large part going to be, if we approve this policy that Butch has just presented to us, much of what's in the policy is currently in the Title 57 rules. And so I think the idea is to repeal the rules because they have no regulatory function. There's, the rules don't give us power to take action or I guess that's the best way I can explain that they don't have regulatory function. They're just essentially a policy that's been adopted as a rule. So it makes sense to me we repeal those rules. But then I wonder whether we need a policy, and I'm okay with it. I originally was going to try to talk all of you into not adopting this policy, because I'm always worried about if you adopt a policy, you in the future will encounter some kind of factual situation that we may not be able to act on because of our policy. But I guess I'm okay with adopting this policy because a policy is not a rule. It doesn't have the force and effect of law, and the commission can change our policy or take a different action if a weird factual situation presents us in the future, even if it were in, not consistent with our policy. I mean, we have that discretion. So I will vote in favor of the policy today, even though I'm not a big proponent of adopting these kind of policies. But I do have one problem with the proposed policy, and that's item X on page 8, which is entitled Emergency Clause. And so if you're not there, I'll just read it to you. It says, notwithstanding the previous sections, the department may act on behalf of the commission with notice to the commission to acquire or dispose of real property rights and amend, correct, or maintain existing real property rights necessary for emergencies, errors, and emissions, and to take advantage of narrow windows of opportunity. This section is not applicable to any acquisition or disposals of real property rights where federal aid implications are involved. So at the very end of this policy, this proposed policy says we can take emergency action if we deem it necessary. I don't think we should do that. So if we adopt this policy, I move that we strike X. To be fair to Butch, we've talked about this. He gave me as an example, for instance, we may want to purchase a warden residence in a town, and there's a very short opportunity. Maybe the real estate market is crazy and houses are selling as soon as they go on the market, and maybe the department wants to make sure that they find that right property and buy it. I guess that is an example of where you've done this in the past. I don't know that the department needs that power, because I think they could make a contingent offer on the property. We will buy this property for $100,000 contingent upon commission approval, and then we can meet the next meeting and decide whether we do it. So I just see no need for an emergency clause. I think it's our discretion whether we dispose of any kind of real property interest we have, including easements or fee title or whatever. And I think with the ability to call special meetings and all of us being available by phone, that there's really no need for an emergency clause. So I guess long-winded way of saying I would support the adoption of the policy if we strike paragraph X on page 8.
President Price, if I may comment, Commissioner Crank, I agree with you, and obviously you could see, though we haven't discussed this before, this is where I was going, in that I do support policy when you're we're an entity of the public, basically. We need to be responsive to the public, and I think the policy is in place because the public, you have to have some, while those can change, it is just policy, it's not law, the public has to have some basis of expectation of what, of being informed, of having opportunity, whatever that might be. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think an emergency clause is needed or provides the opportunity to the public that, and maybe in certain instances, that I would wish. So I agree.
Could I respond to on the emergency clause so that it's clear what, maybe it's not clear in the way it's written, but the idea here would be, let's just use that idea of a warden station. So we're dealing, let's say, in a market that's really hot, stuff is selling the first day it goes on the market, and so we get a call, we find out from our local warden that a property has become available, and so we do a little bit of work on it. We see that it's going to happen fast. So the way I had hoped to write this would be where it says, with notice to the commission, we would call basically probably the local commissioner, and we'd say, hey, there's a house on the market, we'd like to enter into a purchase agreement, and in that purchase agreement we will have that it is contingent upon final approval by the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission. So that would be the way we would put it to use. Otherwise, we could, in some small towns where there's just not a whole lot of houses available, we might miss the opportunity, and there may not be opportunities, for another 6 months or a year, without just going out and doing construction. So that's kind of the intent.
Let's let Butch finish.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Don't you think you have that power now? I mean, as long as your offer is contingent on commission approval, I don't see anything else in this policy or any other statutes or law I'm aware of that would prohibit the department from making a contingent offer. And then it comes to the, if the seller wants to accept that, they do, and then it comes to us for approval. So I don't think that you need the emergency clause to do what you've described.
I'm going to ask a question, Butch. If we remove this clause, and this is what Commissioner Crank is, getting at, excuse me, I say if Butch, I'm not speaking close enough here, but if you were to remove this particular clause, paragraph, would this damage the thing?
We would probably do just exactly like we discussed. If we had an opportunity and we were worried about, quote, seizing the moment, we'd probably talk with the director's office and the administration as well as the local commissioner, and then we would take some action and have it contingent upon coming to a commission. So I believe we would be just fine without this.
So we would be just fine there, and we can handle that. With that said, Commissioner Crank, do you have any more to say on this?
No, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Let me ask and see if any other commissioners have something. Anybody else?
Well, President Price, we kind of jumped to the end on Butch's presentation, so there may be some other changes he wants to discuss.
Actually, there's no other really major change to the way we're currently doing business than those that I've just mentioned.
Mr. President,
Mr. Culver?
Earlier this morning, we had an example where you asked for an authorization to proceed on an issue, and we gave you both an authorization to proceed and to acquire. Now, can't we, in the case of, say, a warden residence, couldn't we also do that if we set certain sideboards on the acquire, a dollar amount or something like that? So you could go into this small town and work with the realtors, and if you found a residence that was adequate and it was within the sideboards of our budget, then you could go ahead and acquire, and we could do everything in one fell swoop, make the process a little bit less cumbersome and time consuming for you.
That would be great. The idea of the two meetings, the proceed with the authorization to proceed and basically the final approval, the idea was to give the commission opportunity to give us, to raise questions like what would the cost be to develop, and other things like that we don't have on the introductory meeting. So it just sort of gives an opportunity for the commission to pose questions, and then we come back with the answers to those questions at a future meeting.
And I understand that's not something that we would do very often, but in certain specific circumstances, you feel that that would work adequately.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Crank, you had the motion proposed.
I move that we adopt the proposed policy presented this morning with the exception of item X, the emergency clause on page 8 of the proposed policy.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any more commission discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? No nays. Okay, with this, we're kind of about halfway through. We started at 8, we're getting toward 12. I think we maybe ought to take a break. We have a break scheduled a little later, so let's do this and take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene and address the next item. Thank you.
these up, Charles?
I've got this part of things up. I think we're doing it this.
This question. So, where it says. Where it says branches thereof, exception exclude located. I wish it
We'll get this to this.
says exclude.
Okay, John, you're going to present this, introduce it.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, Director Talbot, I'll introduce this item and just kind of tee this up for the discussion today, if that's okay. As the Commission knows, this is a proposal not prepared by the Department. This is a proposal prepared by Stopper Management Company to change the Commission's border public fishing and hunting easement on the Salt River, and it includes a tributary by the name of Christensen Creek. I'm going to throw a map up. We can just keep this map up here, including when let me grab a proposal here, including the discussion by Mr. Stoffer here in just a minute, so he will likely want to refer to that map as well. As the Commission knows, this was introduced to the Commission first at the July Commission meeting. The proposal is to relinquish a portion of the Commission's easement on the overall. You see the yellow. I'm not sure where the pointer is here. Okay. You see the yellow rectangle. Within that yellow rectangle, the proposal involves relinquishing a portion of the easement that includes Christensen Creek. And again, Mr. Stoffer will go into detail on this in just a minute. That proposal was introduced to you at the July Commission meeting. Since the July Commission meeting, we had a tour of the easement area. We had Commissioner Little and Commissioner Price attended that tour, and others and department staff. We also had a public meeting that was held in Afton per your direction on August 17th. I was at that meeting with a lot of other department staff, as well as Commissioners Price, Anselmi, and Clouda. The Commission has received all of the public comments that we've received on this project, to our knowledge, from all of the public and all the conservation organizations. Any comment that has come in, we've tried to get to you. We hope that you have it all today. I can tell you that we may be off by a couple of comments. We just got one, for example, just this morning, a comment that is, well, I won't even tell you what the position was in the comment. We just haven't even had time to look at them. But point is, we may be off by a couple of comment letters. They're still trickling in. So at this point, Mr. President, you already recognized Mr. Stopper, who is here, and also the current landowner, Mr. West. I will turn this over to them to present their proposal to the Commission for your consideration today.
Antone, would you start off by giving your name and your position on this? I mean, the credits for this, okay?
Yeah, Anthony Stoffer with Stoffer Management Company. I represent the prospective buyer who is looking to buy Toad West Ranch, and I'm the one who represented him on the proposal to make this change.
Okay, just go ahead. I just want to, I know you.
Great.
And things like this.
I'd first like to thank Commissioner Price and Commissioner Little for taking the time to come all the way to Star Valley and to see it out on the ground. So thank you, as well as Commissioner Price and Commissioner Anselmi and Clouda for coming to the public comment meeting. I believe that public comment's an important process and one that I've supported all along the way. I guess I was a little surprised the interest that this proposal has generated. I don't know that I'm going to get into a lot of the detail of the proposal. I think everybody's comfortable or understands what the proposal is. I want to kind of more talk to the merits of the proposal. I know at the comment meeting, there was my feelings are that a lot of the people, a lot of the opposition that came there were loaded for bear based on the newspaper article that was published that said that the proposal was to eliminate a Salt River easement. And if that was the proposal, I'd be opposing my own proposal. I think the Salt River easement is very high value stuff and something that I don't think you should ever give away. And you know, the whole idea of this proposal was to take something that isn't used, that doesn't provide much value to the public, and exchanging that for something that does provide a lot of value to the public. And that was the purpose of the proposal. A lot of the comments that came there at the meeting, for those of the commissioners who were there, a lot of the comments weren't even addressed towards the proposal. There was bullets flying at the Game and Fish for various things that the public might have been misinformed on in some issues, or different things. You know, there's different projects, and so there was a lot of things. There was things that were thrown against me for other projects that I've been involved with. I had one of the big opposition members stated that I was involved with a project where we cut a stream close to the Salt River to try to take water from the Salt River. After the meeting, I went and met with them, and I said, I'd like to understand what you're talking about there. And as we identified the situation, he realized that what that was a situation where the Salt River had breached into a spring creek. We'd lost a mile of main channel Salt River, and also in a sense had lost a half mile of productive Spring Creek spawnery because of the river breaching. We raised $55,000, and with the Corps of Engineer permit and support from the Game and Fish comment letter, we were able to put that back into the Salt River. He saw this construction equipment down there, and he thought that we were trying to take water from the Salt River. So you had a lot of missed comments, things that weren't directed towards the proposal there. But one thing that I found was very interesting is not one person in that meeting said that they went down there and fished. So as I've had a chance to visit with some of the opposition and other people who have supported this project, to visit with the people who have opposed this, even some of the leading people who oppose us have conceded that for the fishing of Salt River, this is a good deal. But some of the leading opposition said the reason they don't want to support this is because they feel that it sets precedents, that somebody with money can come along and buy away an easement. And I understand that concern. And that's why the proposal wasn't to, you know, early on, it was, as Butch Parks and I were discussing this, you know, of trying to figure out value for value, and he was giving me some guidance on what the Game and Fish typically pays for on a per mile one side of the stream. We were trying to figure that out. You know, the idea was thrown out there, not from my side, but that maybe we just, you know, come up with a dollar amount you write to the Game and Fish. And I didn't feel good about that, because I think like just writing a check to the Game and Fish provides no value back to the public. I wanted to do a fish habitat project that we could leverage 4 times, maybe even 10 times in the private donation to make a significant habitat project on the Salt River. I've tried over the last 10 years several times to get a comprehensive Salt River habitat project going, and have always had a hard time getting the engine out of going on that. But so we really felt that this is a first real opportunity, you know, to come up with a private donation to get a significant Salt River habitat project going. So as far as addressing the concern of precedents, you know, the Game and Fish has relinquished or has changed easements in Star Valley on grounds in the past where nothing was given back to the public. Case in point, the Clark's Barn area. There was a blanket easement over 300 acres of Lloyd Burton's ground. There were spring creeks all over that, and about 15, 20 years ago, that was changed from a blanket easement down to 200 feet of the Salt River, and the easement was taken off all the spring creeks. And in my mind, that wasn't a good deal for the public. I'm a beneficiary of that. I wasn't involved in that process, but I later bought some ground in that area, and so that's why I'm familiar with it. And that's, in a sense, what led me to the idea that maybe this would be a way we could generate some money for a Salt River Habitat Project is by relinquishing something that's not used, that provides no or little value to the public in exchange for something big. So I feel like the precedence has been set as far as that goes. We're not setting precedents on this side. But I feel like that, if we are setting precedents, let's set precedents that, it's not value for value. It's taking something that is no value or little value. There might be a couple people that go down there, but in exchange it for big value. To me, that's, I hate to use the word business, but that's just good business sense to take something that the public's not using. The public uses the Salt River tremendously, and the Salt River is in significant need of habitat work. The Game and Fish have never done a habitat project that I'm aware of on the Salt River. The last significant habitat project that was done was 20 years ago, and my father was the president of the local chapter of TU, and they were able to do some projects there. They were only able to raise $3,000 of private funds. They were able to get that matched up to $56,000. So with this, $100,000 coming into a fund, we're confident that we can really leverage that. When I made my proposal in Cody, I was optimistic that I could match another $100,000 in private and then get another $200,000 in public and make this a $400,000 project. I'm actually more optimistic that we can go far above that now. I've had some conversations with Steve Meadows, who's the vice chairman of the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust. He's based out of Jackson Hole. I don't know if you're familiar with him. But they fund a lot of habitat projects around the state. And he has said that it would be of strong interest to him to see a comprehensive Salt River habitat project, not just a little Band-Aid here, a little Band-Aid there. And this proposal provides the catalyst that will really allow us to do something significant. And I think if they got behind us, Trout Unlimited got behind us, with the resources that we come in through here, plus all the other landowners that I know, I really think that we could do something really, really neat for the Salt River. It needs it. It's getting tremendous pressure. The Jackson Hole outfitters, they're pounding it because the South Fork of the Snake River over in Idaho, they limit the number of guide boats on that big river. And so because they're limited there, they all flock up to the Salt River, and the Salt River is a little river and it can't handle that pressure. And so we need habitat work to be done so that the public can enjoy that river. Aside from all the habitat dollars, though, the greatest value, and this isn't just my opinion, but this also comes from Anna Senekal, who's the biologist there in the Jackson office, is that the habitat work that would be done on Christensen Creek would be far more valuable than all the miles of Salt River habitat we'd do. And the reason why is that the Christensen Creek is the fish hatchery for the Salt River. And Rob Gibson sent an article, sent a study that was done in 2001. I don't know if you guys received a copy of this study or not. It was a study that was done by a University of Wyoming student for a master's. And basically they ran a study on Christensen Creek. They took 4 spring creeks in Star Valley, 2 that had the habitat work done on them, and 2 that hadn't had the habitat work done on them. And the study they did was very comprehensive, and if you'd like a copy, I can leave this for you guys to look if you haven't received this. But the end results were, I'm going to compare Christensen Creek to Anderson Creek. Christensen Creek has the habitat work done upstream from Tobe West property because Lee Perkins from Orvis has done all that habitat work. Anderson Creek is a similar sized creek that, according to the study, actually has better spawning gravels, okay, but doesn't have the habitat. And the conclusions, the conclusions I was going to quote right here, it says, the streams with habitat improvements, Christensen and Perk Creek, had substantially more migrant and resident Snake River cutthroat trout spawners in them than the unimproved streams, Anderson and Bee Creeks. Also, 97% of observed reds were found in the improved streams, and only 3% of observed reds were found in the unimproved streams. Habitat improvements in Christensen and Perk Creeks led to abundant adult fish and spawning habitat. So even though Anderson Creek had better spawning gravels, 90% of the reds were found on the improved Spring Creek. That's how important Christensen Creek is, and how important these spring creeks are to the Salt River. During the public meeting, somebody brought up the comment and says, well, you know, these rich guys are coming in here, they're developing these spring creeks, and all the fish are just going up into these spring creeks, and they're taking them from the public. This study actually studied that and found that in these spring creeks that 50% of the fish are just these genetically migrant cutthroat that come up to spring, that spawn in Spring Creek, and then they go back into the Salt River. So the more improved spawning beds we can have feeding the Salt River, the better the Salt River is going to be. So it's really really important that we, you know, take those big spring creeks, and there's not very many of them. Christensen Creek is the best. That's the best spring creek in the valley. We have an opportunity to create 0.41 miles of an amazing fish hatchery there for the Salt River system. So, you know, if this were to be giving up something that the public were using, you know, then I can understand that. But we're not setting precedents of taking something of high value. There's little value here to the public. It's a 3 mile, the access down there, it's the very end of the access area, so it's 3 miles down the river if you walk the banks. I think about a mile or mile and a half as the crow flies. Few people go down to that stretch. Most people are just floating through there. So, you know, this I think is a really, we have a big opportunity here. I know that with the opposition, there's political risk. That being said, I think it's such an important issue that we saw Senator Dan Dockstader drive all the way to Cody to support this. He lives in Grover. He understands the importance of this, the benefit of this. You know, many of the fishermen in the valley, you know, I haven't seen the comment letters that have come in. I understand that there's quite a few opposition letters, quite a few support letters. Okay, I didn't go around and rally anybody. Okay, I've talked to people. As I've explained to people said, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good deal. But when it's published in a paper that we're taking away Salt River easement, you know, I can see why people would get upset. And those that chose to come to the meeting, you know, I don't think the people at the meeting had ever been down to Christensen Creek and had seen that. So I really don't think that you're giving up anything of value here, but you're going to get a lot back. You're also going to get, I mean, I'm going to donate my time to a comprehensive Salt River project if we get this happen. I'm very passionate about the Salt River. And I would be the one who would lead the train to make this happen. So that's my comments on the Christensen Creek proposal. I know there's also some other issues associated with the access issue down through Grover Creek. Commissioners Price and Commissioner Little, they were able to see that if Grover Creek is defined as a branch of the Salt River, it still doesn't connect to the area. So there's not a legal way to get down there to the access issue. That's something that I think Tobe can more address, because that doesn't necessarily pertain. That's kind of a side issue that arose as we were investigating this Christensen Creek. Regardless of what you decide to do with Christensen Creek, you probably ought to somehow resolve that with the Tobe for the benefit of the public and for Tobe and for the game and fish. But you know, the emphasis of my proposal really has to do with Christensen Creek and the Salt River. Well, thank you.
Hey, commissioners, do you have any questions for Antone?
I don't have any questions. I'm going to eventually have some comments, but I don't know how many people you have.
We have 2 more people.
I'd rather wait till everybody's
Wait,
spoken.
2 more people. Okay. With that said, thank you, Antone, and we'll move on. I believe Toby West, you put in a blue slip. Would you please come up?
I want to introduce myself. I'm Tobe West. I am the owner of this property. I want to thank the commissioners who visited my property, took their time to come over and see what was going on, and everybody else that came to the Afton meeting. And there is the second issue. The one I'm concerned about is the actual access to this property. And through the years, there's been a mistake making or confusion on how this really happened. I've lived there all my life. I bought this property from my neighbor who I have known all my life, and I know kind of the situation that happened. And through all this discussion, as you can see, all the arrows showing access points on my easement, those are totally false. They never existed and never intended to exist. The way it originally happened, there was a game and fish parking easement up north of my property on the Leroy Christensen easement. It was an actual game and fish parking area with the little ladder that crosses the fence, the cattle guard, the whole works, the signs, everything. Through the years, there was a loophole in the Christensen easement, and it was not a legal description that there was to be a parking lot there. However, through the years, this was how you accessed that property of mine, was the property neighboring it on the south side. After this was eliminated, which I believe it was eliminated legally and it all worked out, that left my property where this easement is really no way to get to it. Because I'm going to contend down to the end that on that easement it states branches, and it's a river, it's a slough, and branches thereof. Branches branch out from the river, tributaries go into the river. I know there's interpretation to be dealt with, but I also talked to Mr. Porter before I bought this, and he explained to me that when he had sold the commission that easement, he didn't want people going through his property. He had dairy cows, he had beef cattle, he had hay ground. And the only way from the highway or the county road there would be right through everything. He did not want that to happen. He said this was the only easement like this, and that the only access was by his permission or by this previous parking lot that no longer exists. And I know we've disagreed on this, and through the last couple years of discussion, every time we see these maps, you've added more access points. There's the original maps that we see when we want to know where we can fish. They originally had 4 of these points. Now there's, I don't know how many, I can't see that far, but they're adding them on irrigation canals. They're little springs, and it's a mistake, and this has to be dealt with. I've personally lost the sale of this property 4 times in the last 3 years. The minute these prospective buyers see that, the question that somebody can walk right down their front lawn, they run, and it has cost me a lot of money. And I know you guys probably don't think the way I do on this, but like I said, I was there originally. I know how this went. I knew the people, the neighbors, and how this all went down. And I'm just telling you, this is right the way I'm explaining it to you. And it's my understanding, if we get this proposal done, all this problem will go away. And as you know, I'd be tickled to death over that. Anyway, that's all I really have to say. And I want to say I've actually seen work that Mr. Stauffer has done in the valley, some of his projects. It is impressive. He can make money go a long ways. He knows how to do this. He knows how to get people to work with him. And there's no fear of it going to waste if this happens. Once again, I'd like to thank you people for taking the time and the effort. I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you, Tobe. Wait just a minute and we'll see if the commission has any questions from you on that. Commissioners? No questions for Mr. West?
Mr. President?
Thank you.
Mr. President, I do.
Okay, excuse me.
Tobe, can you show us on the map where you said the original access was or is?
The pointer, go walk over there.
You can.
Pointer? What do you want to know now?
Where was the access originally established when you first bought the property, you said, from Mr. Porter?
I gotta go, I can't see that far. Back in the mid-1980s, before the 1980s, there was this road that leads to what's now Works.
area right here was a former fire people fish park. I have seen it, I've been around, but don't call it. They all purchased fish from the original people fishing. This striped fishing on the fishing season, the 40 acre piece down here in the west corner. Just looking at that easement, it says right on, the only easement was on that 40 acres. With my understanding that through a handshake agreement with the original owner, Leroy Christensen, and members of the Game of Fish, they allowed people access, walk down across the slough, the over, and all this property. Back then, the slough was just like my slough is now. There was no fishing, they didn't worry about it. And for this property, access this property, walk up through here, reach my property. And that was how it was originally bought. That was the way we got on this property. I've got these access points on the maps. Those, essentially the public would have to pull over in the, on the side of the highway in the bar pit, crawl over my fence, follow these, this is irrigation canal. This is a little spring. Since we've been discussing this, these arrows that showed up, this is an irrigation canal. All these little red arrows, they've all of a sudden come up. They're showing everywhere on the place. You're treating it like it's a blanket, all waters. That's not the way it originally was. But anyway, that was where that parking lot was, and they asked people to walking to get anywhere from that, from all that.
So you're saying throughout the years, these other arrows of points of access, just people started using them,
I
and
bought this property, we typically asked it. I talked to the man I bought it from, he told me this is the way it was. They had to ask permission to cross the place. We called the attorney general to make sure on this before I bought it. That was a major factor in me buying this. And I'm a lawyer, but I've read easements, I've looked at it, I'm pretty sure I'm right. Besides that I knew people and how this all happened. And I don't know if there's a record, I haven't been able to find any papers on this in parking lot. But I'm gonna just maintain the fact that there never was anger access. The only access was from this way, or from the river. Got out on the boat, walked, it's 100 foot on both sides of both the slough and the river. Never was across the property. And the Attorney General in his letter agreed with it.
so on the bottom arrows right there, they access that 40 acres where it was first established, the access below, where you first pointed out, the right there, and they walk up there, and then they go to any arrow they want to access the river? Or what's?
This border bill.
You see what I'm saying? What do they do? Just walk up there, different trails?
I'll address that.
Good.
I'll answer that.
This is the fish, which is now Orvis. That's what I've noticed. On Orvis property, this is still under fish, river. Anyway, the old parking lot, you walk across, and then walk across through this old fishing, Orvis property. All the way. Like all of these years back,
Okay.
so not the
Mr. President, excuse me, but while you're there at the map, maybe for the people who haven't been involved in this for the last 3 months, maybe you should start at the very beginning and show us what the orange line means and because there's people watching online too, and they're not familiar with this like some of us, and even a couple commissioners. Maybe you could start at the very beginning. What's the orange line mean, the 80 acres and the river and the slough? And start at the beginning, and then we'll talk about this. We got a couple different issues here. We got the access, and we got what they're proposing.
I think we're going to have to be able to speak into a mic so we can hear on this.
So basically, we initially acquired an easement, which is this boundary here, the big boundary. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tobe, but your property line, your southern line is right here now. Yeah, so Mr. Tobe owns this property up here to the highway, and I believe all further on up. And from Mr. West's property, he's splitting off an 80-acre piece right here. Okay, so more than just the 80 acres. He's actually splitting off this piece all the way to the highway, so it's over 100 acres. So that this yellow boundary was what we thought was being sold, but it evidently includes more. And he's selling this property. And as far as all of these arrows, really the only arrows of significance are these right here, because this is a public road. So the only way that the public could utilize this easement, assuming that this Grover Creek and this other area here is a branch of the river, the only way they could access it without accessing from the salt would be from this road right here through these two arrows. So that's really the only potential access points, as well as accessing from the Salt River and coming back. Does that help?
Okay, so the line for like Mr. Rail hasn't been over there. The lines on the left is the river.
Yes. So this is the
river.
This is the Salt River.
And then that's Christensen Creek.
And that's Christensen Creek.
And just as an aside, there's something about high water mark on the Salt River that would eventually that's an aside. But then does this include what you're proposing to take away the access on the Salt River too, also? You have to refresh my memory.
No, the only just the access on Christensen Creek would be relinquished.
Thank you.
So how would the public get to the Salt Creek then, Salt River?
The Salt River, if Christensen Creek went away, the only way you could access the Salt River would be by boat.
The only way.
No.
Yep.
There's a public fishing easement that starts at Grover Bridge and goes all the way down. So that's the border easement, but there's other easements south that are adjacent to that connect them. And that's really the only way to get down right now is to walk down from the Grover Bridge or
Originally, right here, and now that part was eliminated, that's easy access.
So this is almost a contiguous series of easements that start below Grover and extend far to the north. There's a couple of areas where there's some gaps, but for the most part, there's continuous Game and Fish Commission easement along this stretch.
So what was the original Porter easement that you're talking about that's all that red all the way around there?
The original Porter easement was this area here, and the idea of the easement, I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't here then. It was in 1975. The idea was to be able to provide access to the Salt River and branches and sloughs of the Salt River. And I'm not really sure how engineering worked at that time, but my understanding is they took the topo maps at that time and they looked for what they considered to be branches of the river, which would have been these two here and maybe that one up there. I'm not sure which all ones, but they assumed that those were branches of the river and that was part of the easement.
But for the sake of simplicity, where do they access now, and where are they going to access if this was taken away? I mean,
if this was taken away, the access would be from the Salt River, or if you were coming from another easement to the south, I guess you could walk up.
What other easement do you are you referring to, though? I mean, is it game and fish easement? Is it a
Yes.
public easement, private easement?
Yes. For example, this is the Orvis property to the south, and we have an easement on the Salt River as it goes through the Orvis property as well.
And the way they access now, Butch, would be from the highway?
I'm thinking the actual people that are accessing it, and Ray can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most people are accessing it by boat.
But do they have the option?
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Rail, you through now.
I'm going to answer.
Okay.
Okay. We got to remember Tobus still has a floor.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. President, members of the commission, also as Mr. West is coming up here, the purpose of this map, we apologize for any confusion to anyone with this map. It's not to show any formal access points or our position with respect to access to Christensen Creek or the Salt River. In fact, we took those off of this map, if you recall the first map that we've been using. So we're trying to use maps that are in agreement with Mr. Stauffer and others that make sense to everybody. It's just for discussion purposes. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Gary, go ahead.
Thank you, President Price. Mr. West, so for the benefit of the rest of the commissioners and those listening, what I'm going to be addressing right now is the original easement with the Porters that I'm looking at right now. The question that I have for you, Mr. West, is this is going to be my apology to the department as well as you, but hopefully you can answer this question. So, the easement, the intention of this easement, the original easement as I read it, is a permanent public pedestrian fishing and hunting easement in and to all of the Salt River. And then you brought up, including sloughs or branches thereof, with the exception of sloughs located in, and then it gives southwesterly descriptions of Section 30.
Yes.
So when Commissioner Price and I came out that day to visit the property in person, and we have later discussed it, we made the assumption, well, and perhaps without talking about our assumption, do you know what these descriptions, and I can read them in more detail, but do you know, like southwest quarter of southwest quarter, do you know where that slough is located that they are describing? I know you've read this easement before.
I believe that is, and I'm not sure. It really doesn't, I know, but it really doesn't pertain to what we're talking about, but I believe it is south. It's possibly the Orvis property right now, and there was an exception made, and I do have a map not with me, and it shows these sloughs, and that, I believe, is where the Orvis place is.
Well, because what Commissioner Price and I were wondering when we talked about it later, you don't mind if I, is, remember when we were coming from the Salt River and we were discussing the closest access point to Christensen Creek from the Salt River? Remember there was an old, gone long ago, channel portion, which, you were more interested in developing than any of the game and fish was because it's just too expensive, a channel of the Salt River. And we wondered, Commissioner Price and I wondered if that might have been a portion of what they called the slough.
What this exception you're talking about, I don't think has any on my property. It's not even on my property. It's on part of the Porter property that I did not purchase.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. So I guess, thank you so much for that. So anyway, as I read this original easement, the intention was, Mr. Mr. President, is it all right if I proceed?
Go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. So how I read this original easement is that the intention was for pedestrian fishing and hunting to the Salt River. And while we're, and it does say sloughs and branches thereof, but there are no branches that enter the Salt River on this property. There's when you talk about these access, I know now I'm going to address your question, Commissioner Al. When you talk about any of these access points, and I very much appreciate Deputy Director Kennedy's comments about that they're not trying to guarantee that those are actual access points, because they are not. Grover Creek, and I don't want to insult you in any way, Mr. West, but most of these arrows were irrigation ditches. And they're not as wide or as improved, that's where I don't want to insult you, as the ones on our ranch. I mean, there is no way those are access points, and Grover Creek isn't as good as the irrigation ditches on our place either. And I'm talking about the ones we throw a canvas in. These are they're not access points. And Grover Creek doesn't even enter the Salt River on this property. So even if you legitimately called it a creek, which I guess you guys do in that area, you couldn't follow it down and within the confines of this that they're talking about, get to the Salt River. So there is already no access point to Christensen Creek other than the Salt River, either by water or by following the banks. There is no other access, unless Mr. West would allow it through his property. And
Let's let Kerry.
Have some points to make. I thought we were taking public testimony.
We're taking public testimony and questions and answers there.
Okay.
I think we'll allow Kerry to go ahead and clarify her point. I understand where she's going.
But is this a question?
no, I actually asked our president if I could continue after my question with Mr. West, and he approved that. If you would like me to wait, I can do that as well.
I mean, let's have a discussion amongst the commission once we hear all the public testimony.
Okay.
I'm waiting.
Okay. Following that route then, Mr. West, we may call you back to answer questions because I know where Kerry's are going and where the talk, why we're talking to. Okay, with that said, we have one other person that's asked to come up and speak, Joy Bannon. Would you come up, please?
Commission President, members of the Commission, Director Talbot. My name is Joy Bannon. I represent Wyoming Wildlife Federation. You probably saw our letter in your Commission packet. The Federation opposes the Christian Creek proposal because it would relinquish access rights along the creek, which is used by recreationalists, both anglers and duck hunters. This forfeit of access would be in exchange for a $100,000 habitat improvement project, which we believe the long-term benefits of access would not be offset by this improvement. Loss of access reduces public interest and participation, which equates to reduced income to a wide array of businesses and communities. Another concern the Federation has is if the proposal were granted, it would be setting a bad precedent. The department would see additional similar proposals from other easement holders, compounding the potential loss of access. Also, if the proponents really do want to improve the creek, the fisheries, and the Salt River, then habitat improvements should be sought out that don't remove access. Please deny this proposal to relinquish hunting and fishing access at Christensen Creek.
Okay. Thank you, Joy. Commissioners, question for Joy? No questions from the commissioners at this point. I think at this point we're going to, because of this situation, is there anybody from the public that wants to comment on this item that has not signed up with a blue sheet? Okay, so we've pretty well covered that. Now, I'd like to return at this point there to the commission. If there's no other questions, and we can still call people to answer questions, let's have a motion to put this on the commission floor, the floor for the commission.
I move that we deny the proposal.
Okay, it's been moved. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Commission discussion.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would go first. Just a couple points. First, all this discussion about what the easement does or does not provide, I would submit, sir, you bought property with an easement on it, and you have a belief what that easement does, and I understand that. But, I am a lawyer and frequently get involved in these type of real property questions.
Kind of let it play out.
Sometimes lawyers and others write very clear easements, and so it's pretty easy to determine what is and is not allowed by an easement. An easement is the Porters at some stage before the current owner bought this transferred some of their real property rights to the Game and Fish, and and it's via some language, and I would state that we could probably all sit here for days and discuss what that may or may not mean, but there are legal rules of statutory construction, that ultimately, if it's necessary, can be used to sort out what the easement, actually involves when it says, I'm just going to paraphrase Kerry, but access to the Salt River and the sloughs and tributaries thereof for hunting and fishing, and then excluding other sloughs. I tell you, generally, the law would say if you go to the extent where you say it includes all sloughs, but it excludes these specific sloughs, probably, my opinion as a lawyer would be that the court would say, well, then it includes all other sloughs. If they took the time to exclude certain sloughs, then all the other tributaries and sloughs would be part of the easement. But, there are other lawyers who would disagree with me, and maybe there's courts that would disagree with me, and maybe the Wyoming Supreme Court might disagree. But it seems to me all that is irrelevant, really, to the question that's been put before the commission, Mr. President, because we're being asked in exchange for $100,000 and your promise to go out and try to raise other funds, which, with all due respect to you, doesn't mean much to me as a commissioner, because it's not in the bank. Some rich guy is going to buy this property, and good for him and good for the current owner, but he wants to extinguish a public easement that exists on that property because it's more valuable to him if there aren't duck hunters or fishermen trooping around on his property, at least on the Christensen Creek portion of it. And so he wants us as a commission to extinguish the public's right to go upon that easement which we own. There may be some dispute in the future about what is the nature and extent of that easement and what access is to that easement. But the bottom line is, someone wants us to take the step of extinguishing the public easement in exchange for $100,000 plus a promise that maybe we'll roll that into some additional future funds, which, as I say, doesn't mean much to me because the money's not in the bank. And I just think that is a horrible precedent for the Wyoming Game and Fish Commission to embark upon. Over the years, other commissions and other land, I think right-minded thinking landowners have transferred some of their property rights to the commission, and we hold those for the public benefit and for the benefit of our wildlife, and to allow, a person who bought land full well knowing that there was an easement on it, to now ask the commission to sell that easement for $100,000. And this isn't just 10 years or 15 years. In perpetuity, we're giving up all access of the public to access Christensen Creek, which we presently own. I think is a horrible precedent that we should not embark upon as a commission.
Okay, thank you.
That's my reason for my motion to deny the proposal.
Okay. Other commissioners? You satisfied?
No, I'm ready to
Okay.
take mine.
Yeah,
Whenever.
Let's kind of keep the time limit down
Okay.
a little bit. Keep the time limit down, please.
President Price, and in complete respect to Commissioner Crank's comments, I think that he provided a perfect example of what I think is confusion in regard to what's being requested. So, and I agree with him in regard to precedence of easements, but I think the confusion here is that Mr. West and Mr. Stauffer are not, the easement is on the Salt River. I think that was definitely the intention, and I'm looking at a letter from the Attorney General's office in 1997, which was intended to clarify this, and simply said that the easement in and I'm paraphrasing for time, allows the public to traverse unrestricted along both sides of the Salt River and sloughs from midstream to 100 feet above the high water line while fishing or hunting. So the intention of the easement was for the Salt River, which is not what they're asking us to relinquish. So I don't think we are being asked to relinquish the easement. They're wanting to clarify that Christensen Creek is not part of the easement, and I don't think that that was the intention. And for a easement which was $12,000, they're offering up $100,000 of habitat improvement on the Salt River, which is the intention of the original easement. So we're not trying to take away access on the Salt River or relinquish it. And I agree with you, I wouldn't want to do that, so I do agree with you. What we're talking about is Christensen Creek, and as I read through the public comments, I think that's the confusion of the public too, because every time I read through one of the negative comments, they were, we don't want to relinquish access on the Salt River. But that's not what we're being asked to do. So it's not that I disagree with you at all. I do. But I just don't think we're talking about the same thing. Because we're talking about Christensen Creek, and I don't think that that was ever part of the original easement's intention.
Mr. President.
Is there any, I'm going to hold you just a minute, Pat. Any, questions from this side over here?
My only comment is it also reads tributaries and branches thereof. And so if it's just the Salt River, why was that included?
Well, and
let's turn back to Commissioner Crank.
One of the difficult things in the law is trying to determine parties' intention in 1937 or 1912 or 2014. And what you do is you look at the written document. And I'm going to agree with Commissioner Culver and respectfully disagree with you, Commissioner Little. I don't know how we can determine the intention of the porters in granting the easement to the Game and Fish, except for the explicit language of the agreement. And as Commissioner Culver stated, it says hunting and fishing on the Salt River, its tributaries and sloughs, excluding these sloughs. And so clearly, I believe that I think the intention, if we have to reach the intention, but I think I don't think we even need to go to try to discern what was in the mind of Mr. Porter and what was in the mind of the Game and Fish at the stage where they signed this document. We have to look at the document, and it says the Salt River tributaries and sloughs. And whether there's access to that is not relevant here for I don't believe it's relevant for purposes of considering this proposal. We're being asked to extinguish a public easement for $100,000, and that's a horrible precedent.
Thank you, Pat. We've got a motion on the floor, been moved and seconded. I guess call for the question. All in
There's
favor?
no further discussion. I don't know if other commissioners.
No more call for the question. Discussion.
No, what's the motion? Read.
The motion is to deny the proposal, to trade our access for $100,000, and I guess a promise to raise some other monies in the future.
That's okay. That's the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay?
Aye. Nay, whatever.
Nay? Your nay?
I'm a nay.
Okay. Motion passes. Carrie has a nay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I know it's a long distance, and I appreciate it, but okay, let's kind of move along. What time is it? 11:30. Scott, Edberg, let's go ahead.
Commissioner President Price, Commissioners, Director Talbot, the next agenda item is to repeal Chapter 57, Commission Regulation Chapter 57. Since there's now a policy in place of that regulation is no longer necessary, so we ask that you vote to repeal that regulation.
Okay. Have a motion, please.
I so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I think Commissioner Culver, I believe, made the motion. Commissioner Clouda. Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I just want to note that was the fastest presentation
John,
Mr.
go
Edwards
ahead.
ever given in his life, so I appreciate it.
It was 45 seconds as I was counting.
45 seconds.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, Director Talbot, the next agenda item is to set the January 2016 Commission meeting. We generally set that the date and location for the location's always been Cheyenne, so the date for the January meeting we set at this meeting. We don't do the rest because there are some key dates for some conferences and important meetings we have every year that have not yet been established for those other months beyond January. So at this meeting we established the date for the January 2016 Commission meeting, and the department would entertain any potential dates from the Commission. I have a couple of dates. We have Winter WAFWA is January 7 through 11. Other than that, I think we're fairly open. Last year it was January 22nd. Is that right?
And that waffle, that's the deal in San Diego?
Yes.
Can we just combine the meeting with that?
No.
Okay. Sorry.
Mr. President, members of the Commission, looking at some other activities that are planned, and the Commission has always tried to make this meeting as close to the legislative session as possible. I would suggest to the Commission that we look at the last week of January. The legislature is not scheduled, Mr. President, to go in, begin, because it's a budget session. It won't start until February the 8th, February the...
Right around there. Yep.
So,
okay. Lacking any other input, John, go ahead and pick the dates you want for that.
Last week, it's up to the Commission, Mr. President, members of the Commission. The last week is open. We could do 28, 29, which is Thursday, Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, it's up to the Commission.
28th, 29th. 8 commissioners, you heard that. Anybody object or have any conflict? Let's go ahead and do it. 28th, 29th of January, 9th, 2016.
January 2016, January 28, 29 in Cheyenne.
Mr. President, members of the commission, we actually, as the department, spend quite a bit of time looking at trying to spread commission meetings throughout the state and also look at other scheduled activities, as John mentioned. But as we move through this year, perhaps we will send out a request to each of you. And for example, tours, we try to set up tours that are meaningful, that provide insight to department operations that the public might be interested in. But if there are any of those types of areas or locations that commissioners are interested in, we'd certainly appreciate your input on that.
Okay, I kind of talked a couple of times about a commission meeting in Evanston. I know it's down the far corner of the state, but we have a lot of input from that, particularly on the deer.
Okay.
And some of the, migration.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Horn hunting.
There you go.
Okay, do we need a motion to accept that, commissioners?
Oh, for the January meeting.
The January meeting, 28th, 29th of January, and Cheyenne, 2016.
I move we approve the dates of January 28th and 29th in Cheyenne.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. You got that, Sherry? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? Motion passes. Okay, I think Terry has a presentation to us, and we'll entertain that.
Mr. President, Director Talbot, fellow commissioners, and public, I just thought I would give you a brief summary of the 2015 summer meeting of WAFLA from the commissioner's point of view, because Director Talbot gave us a brief little deal in reference to the director's point of view. It was held in Reno, Nevada in July, and Commissioner Culver and I attended the entire commission meeting portion, and then some of the other commissioners came later on for the presentation of our Commissioner of the Year award. So in the Commissioners Committee, those states attending, having representatives attending, were Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, South Dakota, Utah, and of course Wyoming. Some of the, the first day of the commissioner meetings, each of the states present some of the highlights of what is going on in their states. And I think it's really interesting to hear the similarities of issues that we're dealing with and the variations as well. So I just picked a few, very few of the things from each of the states. In Arizona, in June, the Arizona Game and Fish Department and the Arizona Attorney General filed suit against the Secretary of the Department of Interior and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services for failing to develop an updated plan to guide the Mexican wolf recovery program, and they are trying to get them to use science as required by the ESA. Their population exceeds 100 at this point. The Commission is also very concerned in watching that President Obama may issue an executive order proclaiming 1.7 million acres in northern Arizona as the Grand Canyon Watershed National Monument. This action could bypass public input and participation in large as a Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Area, and they also expressed concern that this would add cost to an already upside down $11 billion in management where the federal government is concerned in regard to national monuments and parks. And they are also working with their congressional leaders to seek ability to hunt bison in the northern Grand Canyon National Park, where the herd objective is 250 and the numbers are up to 600 right now. In Colorado, their number one issue was the greater sage-grouse research, where they have invested $40 million over the last 10 years. They also have a ranching for wildlife program that they're working on in regard to bighorn sheep. They can also do something that's like an 80-20 deal with other species as well, but their idea at this point for the bighorn sheep was a 3-to-1 deal. In Colorado, landowners actually get, well, like similar to our landowner tags, but they can sell them for a profit. And so the idea was a 3-to-1 deal where the landowner would get 3 licenses that they could sell to every one that the public got, and plus they would supply obviously access into their property to hunt, and they would supply a guide for that public hunting. The number 2 option was a 2-to-1 deal, and they didn't have to supply a guide. They also discussed their aquatic, they called it aquatic nuisance species, and they said that that is costing them approximately 50 to 60 million annually, that the Pueblo Reservoir is positive for quagga mussels, but no positive water for zebra mussels yet. In Idaho, they're involved in a lynx lawsuit over trapping, and an environmental group there is suing each of the game and fish commissioners individually. They moved their youth licenses from 12 years old to 10 years old for big game, and this did increase the number of licenses that they sold. They're also working on a branding campaign. They've had some issues in Idaho, so they're working on a branding campaign to get out what their Game and Fish Department and Commission do for the public and representation. And then this was the first state to bring up the discussion of what they believed was the next big non-game species that was, major focus was going to happen, and it's monarch butterflies. And there was a presentation, Commissioner Culver was there for a while, and I stayed till the end, that went for like 2 hours on this, that there's an objective to have 225 million monarch butterflies by 2020, and they say there's only 50 million right now. And this, they're collecting their data by just accepting public input, which was kind of interesting. Nebraska, the hunters checking deer in the firearm season of 2014 encountered a new electronic check-in system there, where the Game and Fish staff used barcode scanners to read the hunter's information online and then entered the deer's age, gender, species, location of kill, and other data directly into the database. So, and their staff said that really had worked well. I suppose that's where all of you gals want to head someday too. Nevada, the aquatic invasive species they said the occurrence of those remained relatively static through the mid-2015 so far. This was in July, remember. The continued presence of New Zealand mud snails and water milfoil, they're monitoring for quagga and zebra mussels, continue statewide. And of course, we are talking about Nevada, and so their wild horse issues continue to be, the inaction of the federal government. In New Mexico, they're wanting to expand the take of bears and cougars in specific areas, and they were using DNA that they had harvested from barbed wire that they placed around bait. And then Ted Turner has a holding facility for wolves, and the commission had refused to renew his permit until he came up with an actual plan, and then they'll revisit. He has other holding facilities in Washington. For for aquatic invasive species. They're not in New Mexico waters, but they're increasing their focus, and they'd even put up billboards in urban areas to make sure that people were paying attention. And in South Dakota, they I'm sure a lot of you, especially those of you who hunt, this is like known knowledge, but it was news to me that people can hunt in the right-of-ways in South Dakota, that's considered public land, and that was interesting. And then they had quite a discussion, which kind of entertained us, about the Asian carp issue in the Yankton, and they said they're just plumb dangerous. They're just jumping at people in their boats, and they said it was actually a real dangerous situation. And then they had also just purchased a golf course, which they were going to add to their Good Earth State Parks. It's going to continue as a golf course for the next 10 years in a transition to get there slowly. Of course, the rest of most of the commissioners were able to come down, and we did win Commissioners of the Year, which I think we all want to thank in large part to the department, who we didn't even know put us in for that, and so thank you to all of you for that. Director Talbot brought up earlier that Governor Meade is chairing the Western Governors Association, and his topic was ESA reform. And then, of course, Wyoming will be hosting in 2016, where Director Talbot is the chair for the directors, and I'll be chairing the commissioners groups. The dates are 7th through the 11th or 10th in San Diego, and the 21st to the 22nd in Cody. And on the commissioner's side, the main topics of discussion will be human dimensions, related activities, the Blue Ribbon Task Force update, which Governor Friedenthal and Johnny Moore of Bass Pro Shops co-chair, traditional funding trajectories that the Idaho commissioners will represent that information, and alternative funding generation. And are there any questions? Or would you just like to go?
Did anybody have any ideas for alternate funding, or did anything you've been talking about? Anybody come up with any magic bullets or anything that you got from that?
Well, that's what in July or January, excuse me, at the San Diego meeting. That's where that's going to be a main topic of discussion. We kind of at the end of each or throughout we start discussing, and at the end we determine which are going to be the main topics for the next meeting, whether that be the winter meeting or the summer meeting, and that every, Commissioner Culver, wouldn't you agree that every state is looking at that pretty hard, what it would be alternative funding options?
They are, and in keeping with that, another point of discussion at these meetings is what are the items that are draining the budgets of some of the different agencies. And I know Texas, one of their primary concerns is their captive deer breeding program, and the amount of time and resources it takes for them to monitor these captive deer breeding programs. New Mexico this year brought up their transferable license system and the abuses they're seeing with it and how much of their time and resources that program is taking. So it's a pretty interesting conversation, and it makes me glad that some of these roads we haven't gone down, to be honest with you.
And finally, I'd just like to, and I'd like to make my pitch. So next year in 2016 will be my final year, some of the rest of us on the commission. And when Commissioner Culver and Commissioner Anselmi came on, Commissioner Culver was good enough to accept the kind of position of second. You know, he'll be starting to take over as first even next year. I'm hoping he'll present when we get to the commissioners meeting, since I'll be chairing it. And I really think this is valuable. I hope you'll speak to that one way or the other, Commissioner Culver, but I really think this is valuable to go and keep a consistency like that, so that you have someone who always says, I'll go. And I did that. Commissioner Culver took that over when he came on, and I guess I'm making my pitch to Commissioners Crank and Commissioner Rael to consider, at least, not that others can't go, but which of you would make that commitment to, it's twice a year, January and July, commit to go and keep that consistency so that you have that person who is always, I mean, you could both go, but you see what I'm saying? Keep that consistency so that someone knows what those next topics are, and you're being consistent. And so I just want you guys to think about it because you're the next generation.
Yeah, that's scary.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Carrie is our representative to the WAFA, like she's described, and it's important we do keep up this commitment. And I'm going to put in a plug for it. One of the things that the WAFA does is it spreads out a lot of information, and a lot of our problems or interactions, I better say interactions, have to do with the federal government. And we're all kind of having to address those same things. And that's a good source of information. Thank you. With that having said, anybody else have a comment? Okay, I'd entertain a motion for...
Might call for public comments if there's
any public comments from the general public? Any comments? Okay. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I second.
Commissioner Anselmi?
I second.
Commissioner Reynolds seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Or there's nobody that wants to stay here.
Mr. President, may I say one thing real quickly? May I say one thing real quickly? I'd like to thank Director Scott and Vice Director John and everybody involved for the thoughtfulness of this. I didn't contribute much. I only came on board in March, and like I told Sherry, I put my hand in a cherry pie. So on behalf of Mark, not Mark, but Mike Seeley, is that right? And Aaron Clark, thank you.
Thank you.